That sound, that music, of battle. Across decades of gaming, it soothes me.
There's a moment in combat where time glitches. You wait for forever. Then, like lightning, the swing comes fast, furious, unforgiving, but you don't step back.
You meet it.
Not with brute strength, but with rhythm, with timing,
With poetry. This is the parry.
Of all the mechanics that govern combat in games, the dodge, the roll, the block, the combo, none feel quite like this. The parry is a mechanic that doesn't just stop the blow, it reverses the danger. One frame, one breath, and the predator becomes the prey. The hunted becomes the hunter. The attack, a mistake. The defense, a crescendo, instigating a dance between foes. Weapons clash and their song echoes across the battleground as the warriors move to the rhythm. But sometimes there's no music, just the sound of flesh grinding against flesh, clothes flapping against clothes, and the grunt of effort. The first game that featured the first true parry mechanic was Samurai Shodown 2, a fighting game released in 1994 on Neo Geo arcades and other consoles like the Game Boy, Sega, PlayStation, and PlayStation 2. The game allowed players to deflect attacks with precise timing, and ever since, the mechanic has only evolved. But it wasn't officially called Parry until the name was assigned in the game Killer Instinct 2, another arcade fighter released in 1996. Then the second release of the game series, Tekken, on the PlayStation, popularized it in the same year. Afterwards, the year 1997 arrives, and Street Fighter III releases to help propagate the mechanic by requiring players to tap forward at the exact moment of an opponent's attack to deflect it. But wait, where did these three pioneers of the mechanic get their idea from? You see, the parry didn't just exist in pixels on the screen. It wasn't just conjured, it was adapted from real-life combat sports and given color. So, it bears practicality. Numerous combat sports have different names for it, mostly dependent on its execution. In boxing, they call it as it is, parry, where a deflected jab becomes an open cheek, and a missed hook means opportunity. In Filipino martial arts, it's called gunting, also known as destructive parry, where a scissor check of the wrist or forearm with sticks or hands turns a lethal swing into broken bones. In Muay Thai, it's called check for kicks and parry for hands, where fighters use hand parries for jabs and shins to redirect kicks. These combat sports and more had an influence in the first three games to feature the technique. While other sports like fencing, which features 8 classical parry styles, and the historical European martial arts, which features a static hanging parry with a long sword, had more influence on the latter games involved in parrying with swords. The importance of these three pioneer games cannot be overemphasized, as they laid the foundation for the series of games that would later elevate a beloved studio to a AAA1 and revolutionize the standard of parrying in video games. That studio is From Software. In the 90s and early 2000s, FromSoft had been involved in the production of a couple of games, including the earlier versions of Armored Core. But none of these games were really household names in the gaming community, at least globally. Their successes were limited to Japan. Then enter Hidetaka Miyazaki. This genius joined the company in 2004 as a designer for the Armored Core series, helped put it on a wider map, then later went on to serve as the creative director for the Demon's Souls game released in 2009, the Dark Souls series, and virtually every other game released by the studio since then. The adoption of parry into Demon's Souls by Miyazaki for FromSoft in partnership with Sony represented a change in genre for the mechanic for the first time. What was once seemingly beholden to fighting games had now begun its journey in the RPG landscape. With the genius at the helm, the parry became a high-risk, high-reward defensive technique that allows players to deflect an enemy's attack and follow up with a devastating riposte, dealing massive critical damage. The mechanic became rooted in precise timing. The maneuver instantly kills weaker enemies and significantly damages stronger foes, making it very effective if you have mastered your mind chakra like this dude, Ongbal. Man, this guy must be some kind of monk because his patience is just next level. Anyway, for the release of Demon Souls, Miyazaki hadn't consulted with any demons because parrying was more forgiving compared to later entries. The game's window for successful parries was marginally wider, and the enemy's attack patterns were generally slower and more readable, especially in early game areas. Shields like the Buckler and Knight's Shield were ideal for parrying due to their faster animation speeds, and players utilized these weapons, cruising through the beautiful, dark, brooding world, barely engaged in rolling except the noobs. Since stamina management was crucial, players had to weigh the risk of mistiming a parry, which leaves them vulnerable and open to being staggered or killed. But many took that risk. It was that easy. Then comes Dark Souls. For this, Miyazaki had broken bread with the Legion, and they'd given him ideas. Some soul-crushing, head-scratching, controller-destroying, and haunting ideas. The parry became more refined and difficult. The animation speed of different parrying tools, like small shields, daggers, or bare fists with the casters, affected timing. Smaller shields and the parrying dagger offered faster parry frames, making them ideal for skilled players. Bosses and large enemies are typically immune to parries, but humanoid enemies, invaders, and some NPCs are fair game. The timing also varied with enemy types, which made it essential for players to learn the specific attack, wind-up, and telegraph of each mini and main boss. The game wanted us to be more cautious and develop our pattern recognition skills to master parrying. So what did we do instead? We became wheels. Overall, parrying in both games emphasized skill, timing, and enemy familiarity. It was not mandatory, but it significantly tipped the scales in a player's favor when mastered. While Demon Souls served as a slightly more accessible introduction to the mechanic in RPGs, Dark Souls deepened the challenge and utility of parrying as part of its broader combat complexity, and to a lot of controversy from players and gaming journalists alike who believed that a game should be fun, not frustrating. But other players, some masochists, some just up for the challenge, told the fun seekers to get good. The success of Dark Souls inspired FromSoft to make a trilogy, all featuring the mechanic. But before the third installment of the series, Miyazaki received another revelation.
Make Dark Souls faster and call it Bloodborne. Take away their shield and give them a gun. Then send them to hell.
And that's what he did. The fast-paced style of the game enhanced the mechanics. Now, instead of a shield for parrying, you use a gun to shoot the enemy just as they are about to attack, which causes them to stagger and allows the player time to execute a visceral attack. The high difficulty of the game scared off players, but those who played it love it like their own child and have formed a cult that won't stop begging Sony for a 60 FPS remaster. After the reputational successes of these games, parrying began to proliferate in the gaming space. More studios decided this mechanic was the hottest cake in gaming town. AAA or indie, the rank of the studio didn't matter. They all wanted their fill of it. Some made it a niche feature in their games, others made it a central gameplay element, but it didn't matter how they did it. Players were happy. We saw games like Metal Gear, Rising, Hellblade, Hollow Knight, Jedi Fallen Order, and even Cuphead adapt the feature. Yes, Cuphead. For those that don't know, Cuphead was released in 2017 and uses a parry mechanic where players could deflect pink-colored projectiles and objects to gain advantages. Every single one of these games received favorable reviews from both players and critics. This thing is a cheat code, I tell you. All of these releases by other studios seemed to anger Miyazaki, and so because of that, he went back for another consultation. This time they told him,
give them rhythm and make them bleed on the dance floor.
And thus the parry game to top all parry games was born. Oh man, I can't gush enough about this game. This to me is the pinnacle of combat in games. I know others have their Dark Souls and their Bloodborne and their first and third person shooters, but to me, this is it. This is where they all bow. No other game gives you as much satisfaction as this one when it comes to parrying. In the landscape of video game combat, Sekiro carved a niche where parrying isn't just a mechanic, it's a dance of courage, rhythm, and precise perception. Unlike earlier titles such as Dark Souls or Bloodborne, where parrying served as a defensive maneuver to punish openings or negate damage, Sekiro elevated it into the very heartbeat of combat. Here, parrying, called deflecting, is not a last resort, but the primary path to victory. The player isn't rewarded for hiding behind a shield or dodging attacks, but for stepping into danger, blade raised, heart steady. What further sets Sekiro apart is its use of rhythm and sound as gameplay feedback. Each enemy strike lands with a sonic signature, the sharp clash of steel on steel, the ringing echo of a perfect deflect. These cues are not just auditory seasoning, they are essential. Parrying becomes less about mechanical memorization and more about musicality. It's a percussion-based duel where gamers must match tempo with the enemy using ears as much as eyes. Sekiro's combat is syncopated. Players must learn when to interrupt, when to follow, and when to hold still like the beat before a drop. In contrast, games like Dark Souls treat parrying as a high-risk, high-reward flourish. Its timing windows are razor-thin and punish mistiming severely, but they also allow for disengagement, dodge, backstab, retreat, heal. In Sekiro, that safety net is gone. There's no stamina bar to manage, only posture, a shared resource between you and your enemy. The game dares you to be aggressive. Bravery becomes a gameplay loop. A coward dies by attrition, but a bold player breaks through the enemy's defense, literally shattering their stance. Other titles featuring parrying that came after it have not come close to delivering what it did. Sifu, Ghost of Tsushima, Elden Ring, Lies of P, Expedition 33. Each offer their own flavor, but none matches it. Sifu integrated parries into a broader martial arts flow, which allowed for fluid counterattacks and combos. Ghost of Tsushima makes parries stylish and satisfying, but still framed them as an option among many. Elden Ring offers parrying as a high-risk, optional mechanic with tight timing, rewarding skilled players with devastating critical hits, but it remains secondary to dodging and build variety. Lies of P centers parrying as a core defensive mechanic, encouraging aggressive timing and perfect guards to chip away at enemy posture while rewarding fearless commitment. Expedition 33 integrates parrying into a stylistic, cinematic action system where it is critical for survival and is heavily tied to visual flair and momentum building mechanics. Only Sekiro places it at the center of its design universe and demands total mastery. Sekiro revolutionized parrying not just by refining its mechanics, but by building a philosophy around it. It said, no more waiting, no more cowardice, hear the clash, find the rhythm, step into the danger, and don't flinch. Do this and your only hindrance to victory is your skill or your frame rate. This brings me to my conclusion. In gaming, I consider parrying to be the best, most satisfying mechanic for combat. The satisfaction it gives a player, or I should say me, just cannot be matched by other techniques. The dodge is instinct, the block is safety, the roll is fear, but the parry is art. You don't just survive, you respond. You say, I saw it coming, I was ready. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and also check out my previous video. But if you want to see more video like this, check out the recommended one. See you there.